EDOL647. I looked into incorporating writing and explicit grapheme phoneme instruction to help my first graders with their sight words. So our meeting agenda is just a quick welcome, an overview of my vision statement as a teacher, and then a discussion of the different strategies that I started using with to help with the sight words, including mix and fix, which I'm sure you're familiar with Jan Richardson, and then kind of the research behind explicit grapheme phoneme instruction and how that can help with sight words. And then we'll go over it, kind of what that schedule looks like for a week of instruction. And then I'm going to go over the other intervention I used as my modification because I felt like they still weren't getting it as quickly as I would have liked, which was adding sentence writing. And then I'll show you the modified intervention schedule I had. We'll review the assessment results, and then we'll talk about potential next steps. So my vision as a teacher, which is very similar to, I feel like, most people, is that we want our classroom to be a place where mistakes can be talked about. It's an opportunity to learn, questions are encouraged, and that we are respecting multiple cultures and being EL teachers.
Of course.
Our whole classroom is multiple cultures. So, and I do my best to collaborate and learn from my colleagues and learn a lot of things from you. And then share my own resources and strategies and try to involve parents in their child's learning through parent-teacher conferences and family nights, all those things.
Of course.
And then everything that I do in my classroom is done with the goal of pushing their learning forward and helping them to think on their own so they're successful adults in our future society. So the problem that I found with my class was that I felt like our first graders, as you know, aren't grading on grade level, and sight words is one of the contributing factors of that. So I wanted they had the listening and verbal proficiencies, but I wanted to target the reading and writing. So I started Jan Richardson's, we've done a lot with her book. I started using the mix and fix method with magnetic letters. So those kids, I they get letters to build their sight word. On their baggie, their word is written, so they can check that they spell it correctly by looking at the word on their baggie. And then they slide their finger under the word while they say it and read it to me. And then they can pull down each letter to remake the word from left to right if they're having difficulties. And then we can scramble them up and remake them if necessary. The other intervention I was also using for the sight words was explicit grapheme phoneme instruction. I didn't use this with all the kids, but for those who the fix and mix still wasn't enough, then for some of them we look at the magnetic letters, and if it's like with, then they would move W first, I, and then I make them move the TH at the same time while they say the sound. And this was based off of the premise that explicit training and grapheme phoneme instruction can help kids learn with their reading and writing. So this is an example. Sometimes I will also pull in the alkaline boxes, which I know you're familiar with Jan Richardson. So I can also write the word on a whiteboard, the students read it aloud, and then we pronounce each phoneme individually while tapping it on their arms, and then I also have them move the magnetic letters together as they pronounce the sounds. So at the beginning, this is what my intervention schedule looked like. On day 1, I would assess the words that they knew, and they would pick out the 1 or 2 words that they missed, depending on the student. The kids, who struggle more only got 1 word, and the others who could handle more got 2. I wrote their sight word on their letter bag. They went to the alphabet chart to pick out the magnetic letters that they needed, and put them in their sight word bag. That was all of day 1. And then on day 2, the student had to use their magnetic letters to spell their sight word. And then I check and make sure they can read it, and they read the word to me. If they can read it on their own, then it stops there. If they couldn't, then we would manipulate the magnetic letters for the corresponding sounds, like the grapheme phoneme instruction. And then the student would repeat that and do the same thing. I would model it, and then they would have to do it as well. And then days 3 to 5 would be a repetition of the same thing. But I didn't feel, I still wasn't content with how quickly they were getting and learning their sight words and their ELs, so we know that writing is important.
Yes.
So I found this article. It talks about using writing to acquire vocabulary. So this particular vocabulary I chose to focus on sight words. But this author based his research on the involvement load hypothesis, which wasn't something I'd heard of. But basically, it's the idea that the more effort it takes for a student to complete a task, the more likely they are to remember and learn from it. So it depends on the 3 factors: need, search, and evaluation. And I think it also goes with like higher level thinking.
Sure.
The more higher level thinking it is, the more effort they're having to put, the more load they have on the task, and the more likely the better that you're going to remember. So Zoe's method was, 1, you could do close exercises, which was where he removed 10 target words. There was a word bank, and all they had to do was put in the vocabulary.
Yes.
Yeah. The second one was sentence writing, where the students had the 10 vocabulary, and then they just had to write 1 sentence per word. And these were college freshmen, so they were required to have 10 word sentences. Because I was working with first graders, I didn't make them have 10 words in their sentences.
Sure.
And the last method that he researched was composition writing, where they take all their vocabulary words and they have to write a paragraph with all of them connected in some way or another. So his theory was that closed exercises would have the poorest learning results in the end, and composition writing, because it involved more effort on the students and thinking of like, not only do I know what these words are, but I can figure out how to connect them in a paragraph. His hypothesis was that composition writing would be the most effective. So I went in the middle because they're first graders and it's their sight words.
Sure.
So I just did the sentence writing. And I modified my intervention schedule by adding that to day 2. So after day 1, when we'd figured out what words they were going to focus on, day 2, they had to do all of that again. They put their magnetic letters together to spell their word. I'd have them read it to me. If they couldn't read it, they had to manipulate the letters with the different sounds. And then they had to compose a sentence that uses their sight word in an original sentence. And then usually I will check it off, and then sometimes the students will peer review each other. And that was the same pattern for days 3 through 5.
Do you also have them say their sentence out loud first before attempting to write it?
I don't.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
Sometimes I do, like if it's like their new sight word, then sometimes I know that I see that they're stuck,
Right.
and I'll have them say it to me out loud.
Okay.
Yeah. And then usually what happens is they figure out like a sentence structure that works really well for that word, and they'll just substitute a noun out, and they'll have this essentially almost the same sentence. And so I let them do that for like maybe 1, 2, 3 days, and then I usually, if I've caught it, I try to tell them they have to figure out a different way to use it. But
That's fair.
Yeah, but it's like exciting because they've
Yeah.
come up with it and they've figured out all they have to do is change a noun maybe. But I want them thinking more.
Beyond that.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So I looked back at my assessment results after that. I had a total of 3 consecutive weeks. For some of these students, they were different weeks because we've had flu, and Rayleigh was out a week, and then Omar was out a week. But these are 3 consecutive weeks at various points in the semester. And so it was really promising because all of them consistently went up, and it's ironic because student 5 and 6 had the same score. It was like, what? I didn't copy the kid. It was a different kid. But so that was exciting to see that I feel like these students are getting their sight words a lot more faster than I have had in previous years.
Sure.
So
That's good.
I really don't have the data. So the next steps would be combining all the mix and fix sight word and sentence writing I found like they were effective in my students learning to read and write their sight words.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll continue to use those in my small group instruction. I'll continue to make student by student decisions on who needs the explicit grapheme phoneme instruction and who seems to be doing just fine without it. And then, so that was research explored the students composing a whole paragraph using the words. So I might look to see, especially for my higher kids, I think you know who they are, like giving them a word bank and saying, all right, see how you can connect all these to try to push their learning forward. And I was thinking I could use this for my 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders with the vocabulary that they get at the beginning of the week. And if I don't have a different good writing prompt that I'm excited about, instead using the vocabulary in a paragraph to use the research method that Zhao had come up with
to demonstrate that they understand the words.
Yeah, have the end of week writing assignment be for them to use their vocabulary in a paragraph and to see how that goes. But that is it. Do you have any questions?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
All right.